Since 1941, more than 2.5 million fans have heeded the advice of Harry Carey and have clicked the turnstiles to see the stars of tomorrow. Over 100 Jamestown players have graduated to the big show, with Nellie Fox being the only one to go from Jamestown to Cooperstown. What was the backdrop which permitted this jewel to be built in Jamestown, New York? The Jamestown Evening Journal of Tuesday, May 6, 1941 gives two big stories. The excitement of the dedication of the new stadium and the ever-present war which is occurring over in Europe, which to date America has been able to keep out of. The headlines are interspersed between baseball and German and Nazi invasion. Such were the winds of war which were circulating in early 1941. Jamestown entered professional baseball in the new era in 1939. They played in Celeron and had an awful season. After the season, the Pirates left and went to Lockport. Jamestown was without a team. Midway through 1940, Harry Bisgeier, owner of the Niagara Falls team, agreed to transfer to Jamestown and finish the season in Allen Park. And the reason he came was because of the promise of the construction of a new stadium. Architects was Ernie Kessler, chairman of the Citizens Committee, and Judge Alan Barger, head of the Citizens Stadium Committee. Excitement ran wild in Jamestown. Noted equestrian and horse trainer Theo Gainey had her early training in Jamestown baseball.
From the Curtis farm, which now is where the college is.
Tell me about that.
And gave that to the city.
Your grandfather's name was?
Herbert Aiken.
Herbert Aiken.
Ephraim Aiken. He's the one, H.E. Babcock from Ithaca started what was GLF has now gone down to Agway. Very acreage, and I'll tell you, he was always, I never found that out until later years, and that he had bought that land and given it to the city.
And that ultimately is where the stadium is.
It's where the stadium is today. You get money from people for solicited for the stadium being built. I took my, no, it must have been a horse, and I collected the first $50 in our neighborhood on a horse.
How'd you do that? Did you just?
Well, my grandfather told me I better, I imagine. You know, he was, he said, go out and see if you, and I did get donations of $50.
You were riding the horse through the neighborhood, eh?
Yeah, riding a horse through the neighborhood.
He did some interviews, and I went to some ball games down there. And it was just like I'd never left. You walk into that stadium, and you know, that stadium looks just exactly as it did. When was that stadium built?
41.
41. Yeah. It was good it was built that year, wasn't it? Because following year, they wouldn't have put up the money for it because of the war.
That's probably right.
Couldn't have gotten bricks for it. All the bricklayers would be off training someplace. But
Between 1940 and 1950, penicillin was introduced, and the atom was split. Orson Welles made his masterpiece, Citizen Kane. Rodgers and Hammerstein's Oklahoma opened on Broadway. And Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected president a third time and a fourth. Overshadowing everything was a world war that would cost more than 55 million lives.
Is there a lot
No,
of
if I
festivities?
missed, no, I don't. I want to say for sure because I forget. But if it wasn't the first day, I was up there soon afterwards. Because I can remember who played then too. I think I'm pretty sure easy.
We need to hear it.
Pollock, catcher. The first baseman was Heller, and the second baseman was Mulleavy. Shortstop was O'Neill. Third baseman I think was Coswell was the next year I think, or maybe he was third baseman because he went up with Buffalo the next year. And there was Johnny Newman, and there was a center fielder I can't hardly remember. I know Lurchin played the next year. He was real good. I always liked him. And there was Rapp. He looked like Andy Gump. A good pitcher, a good hitter.
The Jamestown Evening Journal heralds the Pony League champion Jamestown Falcons underneath a headline which states, Jap peace overtures fail. Hence were the times in 1941. The 1941 season marked the advent of two of the Pony League's most widely known men. Manager Greg Mulleavy, who brought the Falcons their first pennant in organized baseball, and John Newman, who came to Jamestown from Niagara Falls in 1940, and in 1941 was the batting champion with a .358 average, hit 30 home runs to then set a league record. He won the pennant and just narrowly losing the Governor's Cup championship. They had attendance of 121,000 people in 1941, which set all-time records in the minor leagues. There's a great deal of baseball fever in Jamestown.
The very thought of you, and I forget to do the little ordinary things that everyone ought to do. I'm living in a kind of daydream. I'm happy as a king, and foolish though it may seem to me, that's everything, the mere idea of you.
Our ceremonial first pitch tonight will be thrown out by none other than Mr. John Pollock, who was a catcher at this game some 50 years ago.
John Joseph Pollock, the first string catcher of the 1941 Jamestown Baseball Club, was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, April 2nd, 1918. Johnny was always a receiver since his school days at Tech High in Scranton, Pennsylvania, from which he was graduated with the class of 1937. Johnny later played with the St. Michael's Church team in his hometown, and in 1938 went to Smethport, Pennsylvania to accept a job in the filtering department of the Quaker State Oil Company. He also played baseball at Smethport with the refinery team.
Where were you born?
Outside of Scranton, a small town
That's
called
it.
Troop. And I was only in the 8th grade. And I went to the ball game, and I was sitting back down there, and all of a sudden something happened. And the catcher broke his leg. And the coach, he said, "Do you want to play?" It's just like asked me if I wanted $1 million. I said, "I'd love to." And so I got my civilian clothes, I caught the whole ball game, and I never once, from then on, I was always the catcher.
And had you done some catching prior to that?
Oh, I love it. My brother was a catcher. I was a catcher. I was a mascot. And like I said before, we had a county league team. But getting a baseball was something else. I mean, nobody had a buck to buy a baseball. So we used to go down to the county league game, you know, on Sunday afternoon, and we chased a foul ball and hide them.
Sure.
Sounds familiar.
Oh, yeah, and like I said at that Saturday, I said, and then when we knocked the cover off the ball, and we'd tape it,
Yeah, we did that. Yeah. Friction tape.
friction tape, and I got hit right there in the foul ball. I was blood all over. Then another time I was catching a ball game, and I didn't have a jocker. I had a jocker, but no cup. And I put me in the hospital for 4 days.
Oh my gosh. You still went right back and caught again.
I did.
Over the cup.
Tough.
The cup.
Park, and the first Jamestown Falcons game in the Pony League in 1939 was caught by John Pollock. Jamestown won that game 9-4, beating Batavia. This was the beginning of 60-plus years in the Pony, now the New York Penn League.
A scout working for the Buffalo Bisons at that time was always went to these industrial league, and when they were starting a team here in Jamestown, they were looking for a catcher, so they go down and want to know if I wanted to play, and that's just like asked me if I wanted to go to the truth of my mouth. I said yes. So that's how I got to come up here.
How much they paid, John?
I'll tell you what they're paying me. They paid me more than money that the Major League ball players are getting for lunch money than I made in salary. They were getting $75 a day for meal money. I made $60 a month.
And the next position was John Pollock, catcher. Did you play with him all year long?
No, I didn't play with them.
Same thing happened to you?
No, I left to go back to Quaker State. I don't know what happened. We had a little money dispute. I don't know what it was. Anyhow, when you jump a ball club like that, you have a hell of a time getting your release.
And this was Pittsburgh Pirates.
That's right. Then they shipped me to London, Ontario the next year. That's when Pittsburgh took that up into London.
Okay.
After the 1940 season, John returned back to Jamestown, where he became the starting catcher for the 1941 season, and that would be the first season at the stadium. Johnny at the time weighed 170 pounds, batted and threw right-handed, and was 5 foot 11 inches tall. The box score for the first game at the stadium, again against Batavia, unfortunately the score was 9-2 in favor of the opposing team. However, that first game was an exceedingly exciting one for the fans, and here are John's recollections of opening day. Day 1941 at this ballpark where you're in right now. They had a big crowd that day, didn't they?
Over 5,000.
Do you remember much about that opening day, the festivities and stuff?
I had a big day.
Did you really?
I
3 for 4.
Uh-huh.
And you're right.
I had a single, double, and a triple.
And I know I was here.
I won all the prizes. A lot of fond memories in this ballpark.
Yes, yes.
In fact, they used to call it the nickel and dime ballpark. The kids used to check, go to school and bring a nickel and dime and put it in the kitty for the ballpark. That's how they, when they built the stadium. And the man behind that thing was Judge Barton.
Oh, yeah, a big baseball player. Yeah, I remember him.
And then only great.
Was he players manager? Did he?
He was a players manager, and Greg believed in one thing. You do as I say, and you'll never get in trouble. I can remember the time we lost about 5 games in a row.
Ooh.
And Greg was getting all kinds of telephone calls from people. They seen somebody here at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's what do you think? So Greg called us all out at center field before the ball game. He gets in the middle, he said, I don't know what's going on, fellas, but it's got to stop. He said, I get a call 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They see you out here, they see this guy out there, and we're not winning. So it's got to stop. From that time on, we won about 18 ball games in a row.
Yeah, you rarely lost, I know that.
And he was a real fine gentleman.
He was a player manager, wasn't he?
That's right, played second base.
Second base?
Remember that whistle of his?
Yep. Still whistle when he was coaching Detroit,
Is that right?
the Dodgers.
Can you do the whistle?
No,
Yeah, that's right.
How'd it go again?
You could hear it.
What's your thoughts about Jake Pitler?
He was an actor, really, but
He came here for a show.
yeah, I'm telling you, I'll never forget the time. He always carried a dozen baseballs alongside him in the dugout, alongside the dugout. And I hit a home run here one day, and he got a hold of that baseball. He said, "Oh my God, he didn't." He threw the baseballs in the air. He said, "Impossible." But he was a fine gentleman.
What about your first baseman, Frankie Heller?
Good ball. Frankie was a good ball player. One thing about Frankie, he had a mean disposition.
Oh, did he?
Oh, Frank, I'll never forget the time he was on first base, and he always had a big chew of tobacco in his mouth, all the time. And Frankie wasn't paying attention at all where the ball hit him in the stomach, he just swallowed it. Oh. We thought he was going to die. He swallowed that whole tobacco. Man, he went down like a... Then we had another guy.
Okay. Who was the best ball player on the Jamestown team then?
Who was the best ball player? Well, if I had my choice, I would say Earl Rapp.
That's good. I loved him. I thought he was great. Yeah.
Why?
Why? Because he had a potential. He was a great runner, a good hitter, and he could play the field.
Mm-hmm. During that 1941 season, Earl Rapp hit .340 and was one of the leading hitters on the team. Earl would have a career which spanned 19 years and would include stops with the St. Louis Browns and the Washington Senators.
Earl Rapp. Now, I bet you're thinking, well, maybe Johnny Newman. Johnny couldn't, he hit a lot of home runs, but he let a lot of bases.
That's right.
A lot of runs landed because he couldn't hit the ball. But I mean, as a hitter, he was a great one.
Oh, sure.
But Earl Rapp is be my choice.
Was Lurchin?
The owner of the Jamestown Falcons in 1941 was Harry Bisgeier.
What kind of a guy is? Well, I'll tell you one thing, Harry is dead. But I'll tell you one thing, he was a gentleman. We used to hang out with the humidor.
Yeah, I know that. Yep, that's kids used to go get autographs.
Yeah, and Harry would come up and he'd see him with an old shirt on, you know. He said, "Well, how come you got that?" And he said, "I haven't got anything else, Harry. Come with me." He took me down to Big Blues and bought everybody a shirt. And after every ball game that we played, if the treasurer of the ball club was a fellow working at the bank at Jamestown, I think he's dead now. Harry would send him in and he said, Tell any kid down there who needs any money, just ask him, he'll give it to you. But he was a fine, fine gentleman, believe me.
Something.
Harry was one hell, and he was a millionaire too, you know.
Catcher Johnny Pollock and shortstop John O'Neill roomed together in 1941. Both married local girls and made their homes in Jamestown, and were friends ever since, often being found together on the golf course and the local courses.
Jamestown, I'm telling you, they were, God, we were staying with a family by named Milks. And they moved, we moved. Really?
How many ball players were in that home?
Just Johnny and O'Neill and I.
Okay, well, you were roommates.
Yeah, Johnny and I were roommates were in Buffalo too.
Was that right?
And John went up to the major leagues. And with the majors, he went over to the Pacific Coast League. He played in the Coast League for about 10, 12 years.
Really?
In the 1990 Jamestown Jammers program, John Pollock was interviewed, and he said Jamestown fans were baseball mad. They'd have to delay the start of the games because of the lines. They seemed to love the players. Every day you'd get invited to a different family's home for dinner. After games, the treasurer of the club would come into the locker room and ask who wanted money for that night. He'd just take it out of our paychecks, and we'd have a heck of a time. Johnny Pollock ended the 1941 season batting .273. His sidekick John O'Neill batted at .285. They won the league regular season championship and unfortunately lost in the playoffs. During a streak in August, they outscored their opponents 706 runs to 512 runs during the year and went virtually unstoppable, where at one point they won 15 of 16 games. It was a good year, our first year in Jamestown. Of his teammates, John was drafted in 1942 and served in the U.S. Army from February 2nd, 42 through November 1945. He was discharged as a sergeant, and during his time of service was awarded the Good Conduct Medal and the Purple Heart. While serving in the 36th Division, he was wounded and spent time in Naples Hospital. However, while there in the hospital, baseball was always on his mind, as he organized a baseball team and was named the athletics director at the hospital. Before the invasion of Italy, while the 36 was in Africa, he caught for the Army-Navy All-Stars and was named the most valuable player in the North American Theater of Operations. Following his tour of duty in the Army, he returned to Jamestown once again to play for the 1946 Jamestown Falcons team, a team which had the opportunity during the season to play the world champion Detroit Tigers. Thereafter, John retired and worked for Marlin Rockwell for more than 25 years and was exceedingly active in the Jamestown area old-timers.
You have any regrets going the baseball route then?
No, I'll never forget. I loved every minute of it. When I was in high school,
The very thought of you, and I forget to do the little ordinary things that everyone ought to do. I'm living in a kind of daydream. I'm happy as a king, and foolish though it may seem,
I'm Kristen Stein, Director of the Fenton History Center in Jamestown, New York. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation, which is just one of many stories from our community's rich history. The Fenton History Center preserves our shared history through the presentation of educational programs and exhibits, the maintenance of a collection of local artifacts and archival materials, and a library specializing in local history and genealogy, all for the benefit and use of the public. For more information about the Fenton History Center and its activities, call 664-6256.